All right, for the plaintiff, Ms. Weston. For the defense, Ms. Ryan. The March 2013 CSR, full speed ahead, just like it sounded back in March of 2013, 200 words a minute.
A blast from the past.
What's that?
I said it's a blast from the past.
A little bit. Starting with Ms. Weston in questioning. Plaintiff.
Ready? Begin. All right, on the 27th of November of 2012 at about 2:10, were you in the general area of 1600 South Evergreen Street in Santa Ana in the County of Orange?
Yes, I was.
Do you see someone in court here that you saw in that general area that day?
Yes.
Could you identify that person for us, please?
Yes, the man seated at the far left end of the council table wearing the Orange County jail jumpsuit.
Your Honor, could the record show the witness has identified the defendant?
It will so reflect.
Thank you, Your Honor. And where was it that you first saw Mr. Edwards, the man you just identified?
The first time I saw him, he was walking from the east alley of the 1600 block of South Evergreen onto the sidewalk on Evergreen.
All right, were you on duty that day?
Yes, I was.
Now, what did you do or why were you in the area?
We were conducting a narcotics enforcement operation as part of a full suppression team.
Was there something in particular that attracted your attention to Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
What was that?
As soon as Mr. Edwards stepped out onto the sidewalk, he discarded an object onto the ground.
All right, was that when he came into view of you and also then you were within view of where he was walking?
That's correct.
Did anyone go and retrieve the item that he discarded?
Yes.
And who retrieved it?
Detective Burns, he's my partner.
Detective who?
Burns, B-U-R-N-S.
Thank you. Did you have an opportunity to examine the item that was discarded?
That's correct.
Would you describe that for the court, please?
Sure, it was a clear, small Ziploc baggie containing a white crystal-like substance which resembled methamphetamine.
Did you have an opportunity to, or did you subsequently weigh that substance?
Yes.
All right. Did you weigh it in the Ziploc baggie?
Yes.
All right. And what was the true weight of that substance?
It was 0.8 grams.
All right. Did you form an opinion with regards to whether or not that appeared to be methamphetamine or not?
Yes.
What was your opinion?
My opinion was that it was meth.
Objection, lack of foundation.
Sustained.
Move to strike.
Last answer will be stricken.
Reset on 16. Your Honor, if I could have a moment. All right. What happened after you saw Mr. Edwards discard this item?
Mr. Edwards walked in our direction. I asked him if I could speak to him. He said yes. We began our contact.
And when you started to question the defendant, what did you initially say after you asked if you could speak to him?
I asked him if he lived in the area.
What did he tell you?
He described that he resided on Gilbert Street within our city, which was not in our particular area.
Did you have any kind of follow-up question to that?
Yes.
What did you ask?
I inquired what brought him to this particular neighborhood area.
What did he tell you?
He indicated that he was merely walking around. He described to me he was merely walking around.
Okay, and what did you ask him next?
I believe I asked him if he was on probation or parole.
Okay, what did he tell you?
He denied being either on probation or parole.
All right, when you were provided the small bundle, I'm going to refer to it as a bundle. Is that how you would describe it? The bundle of narcotics that was later retrieved by Detective Burns?
I would describe it more as a baggie because it was in an actual Ziploc baggie as opposed to a bindle, which you kind of form yourself.
When you were provided that baggie of what appeared to be meth, what did you do?
Based on that confirmation of what it was and based on my opinion and my observations, I placed Mr. Edwards under arrest for possession of meth.
All right, after placing him under arrest, did you take a cell phone from Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
And what happened with the cell phone? Where did you put that?
It was placed on the trunk of a vehicle that was parked adjacent to us.
Okay, after you placed him under arrest, or excuse me, let me withdraw that. After you had taken the cell phone from him, did the cell phone ring at all?
Objection, leading.
Overruled.
Yes, it did.
Did it ring a lot?
Yes, it did.
Objection, Vegas to a lot.
Sustained.
Do you recall how often it was ringing?
Phone rang continuously during our contact while he was holding it and after it was placed on the trunk of the vehicle.
Objection, non-responsive.
I will just strike the entire answer.
Yes, Your Honor, move to strike.
Counsel, you can ask the question again.
Will you describe for us how often the phone rang after you contacted Mr. Edwards?
I would estimate that the phone rang that there was at least an incoming call per minute during our contact.
Okay, did you or any other officer at any point in time pick up that cell phone and answer one of the incoming calls?
Correct, we both did. I answered the phone on one occasion as well as the assisting officer.
Objection, it should be just yes or no for the answer.
Everything after yes will be struck. The objection is sustained.
So how many times did you answer Mr. Edwards' phone?
I answered his phone at least twice.
Now, who was the first person that you remember talking to?
Based on the investigation, we determined that the first incoming call that I answered was from a Trevor Butler.
All right, when you say Trevor Butler, was this a name that was provided to you after you answered the phone?
It was a name that was determined after Mr. Butler was contacted and the telephone numbers were matched, and he admitted to making the phone call.
Objection, hearsay and no foundation.
Let me withdraw that question and ask it a different way.
Thank you.
Did you talk to a male when you answered the phone?
Correct.
When you answered the phone, was there was a male calling. What did that individual say to you?
He was asking if I was still coming to meet him.
What was your response?
I requested him to confirm his vehicle and where he was located.
What did he tell you?
He described he was in a white Hyundai and he was temporarily parked in the alley.
Did you ask him anything else?
I asked for a further description of where he was located. He described he was immediately next to a red SUV. I also asked him to confirm what he was waiting for.
Okay, what did he tell you?
At that time, he admitted to me he was waiting for black, which is street slang for heroin.
Was there anything else in your conversation with this individual that was of importance to you?
Nothing that I can think of at this time.
All right. Did you also answer a phone call in which there was a female calling?
Objection, leading.
Overruled.
Yes, I did.
All right. And what happened when you answered that call?
She also asked if I was still coming to meet her.
What did you say?
During that conversation, I also tried to confirm what, in fact, we were meeting for, as far as what we had previously agreed on.
And what was her response?
She described that she was waiting for me to deliver heroin to her.
Did you identify yourself as being Mr. Edwards, or how did you identify yourself to this female?
I identified myself as a friend of his.
All right. So in your discussion with her, did you talk about anything other than heroin?
Yes,
What else did you talk about?
we talked about meth as well.
What was the discussion you had at that time?
After I said I was a friend of the defendants, she disclosed to me that she had previously purchased meth from Mr. Edwards and that she was unaware that he also sold heroin, which she preferred.
Did she tell you she wanted to now purchase heroin from the defendant?
She agreed to also purchase heroin from the defendant, which he was ready to deliver to her, and she would have to pay him for that on Friday because she had already spent her money on the meth.
How did that conversation with this female end?
After she described where she was waiting and what she was waiting for, I had the impression that she would be open to talk to me. I then identified myself as a police officer, and she quickly hung up the phone.
So that terminated that phone call.
Yes,
All right. Now, during the phone conversation with the man, you asked where the man was and what type of car he was driving. Is that right?
correct.
All right. Did another officer then go to that location?
Yes,
Have you talked to that other officer about what took place at that location?
yes.
Who was that officer?
Dan Rodriguez.
All right. Did he tell you whether or not he made contact with someone at that location?
Yes,
Did Officer Rodriguez tell you whether or not he was able to retrieve a cell phone from the individual he contacted at this location?
he told me that he was able to obtain the cell phone of the male he contacted and that the male consented to him reviewing his call log.
Objection, hearsay. That's 2 layers of hearsay.
Sustained.
Move to strike that part of the answer.
Stricken. Next question, please.
Did Officer Rodriguez tell you whether he ever inspected that phone?
Yes,
Did he tell you whether or not he was able to observe the call log for that number?
yes.
What was the conclusion in regards to the numbers that he observed on the phone?
We were able to verify the calls between the various phones by checking the numbers and the call logs.
Did Detective Rodriguez indicate he found anything else in the alley when he contacted the people there?
Yes, a meth pipe was in the white car.
Objection, speculation and foundation on if it was a pipe for smoking meth.
You can lay some foundation.
How long have you worked with Detective Rodriguez?
I have worked with him as a partner for at least a year and as a member of the same team for almost 3 years. We have worked together under different circumstances for about 7 years.
All right. Have the two of you both worked in narcotic cases?
Yes, we have.
Have you both undergone training in the recognition of all types of narcotics and things used to ingest narcotics?
I object. It is vague. It is also speculation.
Sustained.
That's fine.
Next question, please.
Can you tell me whether or not you two together have ever arrested people for possession of drugs and also found some items like pipes used to smoke the drugs?
Yes, we have.
Have you both interviewed the people that you have arrested for those crimes?
Yes.
And have you interviewed them together, the two of you?
Yes.
And does your partner have the experience to recognize a meth pipe when he sees one at a crime scene?
I object. Lacks foundation.
Sustained.
Back to the phone calls that you answered. Now, would you describe for us what Mr. Edwards did when you or other officers attempted to answer incoming calls on his cell phone?
Yes, Mr. Edwards reacted by raising his voice and yelling out, both in English and Spanish, that they were talking to the cops. He was telling the incoming caller that they were speaking to a cop.
I object. Speculation as to whether he was actually alerting these people.
Overruled.
Subsequent to the defendant's arrest, was he interviewed at the police station?
Yes, he was.
Was he first advised of his Miranda rights?
Yes.
Did you advise him of his rights?
Yes, I did.
How did you advise him of his Miranda rights?
I read them verbatim straight from the form that we are required to use.
All right, and did Mr. Edwards indicate to you that he understood each of his rights?
Yes.
And did you subsequently then question him with regards to what had taken place that day?
Yes.
All right, did you ask him about the baggie of what appeared to be meth that was placed into evidence?
Yes.
What did he tell you?
Denied ever possessing the drug.
Did you say anything about that to him?
Yes.
What did you say?
I offered him the opportunity to submit to a DNA test so we could compare that to the sample taken from the actual evidence found at the scene.
And what did the defendant do when you gave him that offer?
He refused.
Objection. That is not relevant to our proceedings here today. Pardon me. I'll withdraw the objection.
Okay, did you ask him about the phone conversation you had with the woman who had called his number?
Yes, I did.
Officer, what did he tell you about that?
He admitted he was previously with a female at the park and that he had ingested narcotics with her while they were together.
Did you ask him whether or not he had sold any drugs to any woman that day?
Yes.
What did he tell you?
He denied it.
Nothing further at this time.
Counsel, you may proceed.
When my client told you that he had used meth with a woman earlier that day, did you ask him anything with regards to his usage?
Yes.
What did you ask him?
Questioned him if he would be willing to submit to a chemical test to confirm that he was actually a user of narcotics.
And was he willing to submit to that chemical test or that blood test?
No, he wasn't.
Was he required to submit to that test?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, when Mr. Edwards was arrested, was search performed of the person?
That's correct.
All right, and when he was searched, did you find anything that would be consistent with someone who uses narcotics?
No, I did not.
Did you find anything consistent with someone who sells drugs?
What do you mean?
For example, did you find any packaging supplies on my client?
No, I did not.
Did you find any large amounts of cash in his person?
He had approximately $100 on his person.
Is that a large amount of cash consistent with drug sales?
I believe it is, yes.
What else did you find on my client that led to his arrest?
There were many factors that caused the defendant to be arrested that day.
Could you share those with us, please?
Well, a couple of them was his location. He said he was merely walking around that area, yet he doesn't live in the neighborhood.
But that isn't a crime to be walking around away from your home, correct?
In addition, he was receiving many calls on his cell phone from people who were wanting to purchase drugs.
Are you speaking of the two people that you identified earlier?
There were other calls. Those two are the ones I personally spoke to. My partner spoke to more than that.
Well, I think we will have to wait for that testimony.
Objection. This is argumentative, Your Honor.
Well, let's just have a question, please.
Now, did you form an opinion that the substance that was found in the bindle was a usable quantity?
Yes.
Will you explain your understanding as to what that means to you?
Of course, usable quantity is any amount that could be manipulated for use.
Just to be clear, is that consistent with your interviews of people you have arrested in the past?
Yes, it is.
Have you ever testified as an expert with regards to narcotics?
Yes, I have.
Okay, now let me ask you about what you thought you saw in the alley.
I saw your client in the alley that day.
I understand that, and we aren't arguing whether he was in the alley that day. My questions will be directed to what you saw him do.
Okay.
Could we just have questions and answers, please?
You testified that you believe my client discarded something in the alley when you saw him. Is that correct?
Yes, he did. We had eye contact. He then threw the bindle to the side.